face applications. Any government or partner can download these basic apps, customize them for their own country, and just like iTunes, there is quality control system. The launch of the app was a huge deal which attracted the likes of the Nigerian Finance Minister, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who seized the opportunity to enlighten the world on the progress Nigeria has made.
Nigeria has done well, thank God, in containing the Ebola virus. And today there is no case. We had 19 cases, 7 deaths, the rest recovered, no case. How did it happen? Massive communication. We used the mobile telephony to send out SMSs, the government did, to those 125 million lines. I have mine. I was trying to pull it up on my phone just to show you. So with that, we were able to tell every household what it looks like, the symptoms, everybody who had a phone.
For now, the efforts to contain the spread of the virus in the affected countries continues until Ebola becomes a thing of the past.
Well, experts have confirmed that the hunger crisis has eased after a green harvest in South Sudan, but about 1.5 million people are still in desperate need of food aid. This comes after the charity Oxfam warned earlier this month that South Sudan could tip into a famine if nothing is done quickly by next year. The crisis has been blamed on conflict between government and rebel forces. Conflict broke out in December when President Salva Kiir accused his deputy, Riek Machar, of plotting a coup. He denied the charge but later marshaled rebel militias and the dispute escalated into ethnic fighting. Well, more stories are still making rounds right here at home in Nigeria, and the Senate has begun investigating the $9.3 million seized by South African authorities from 2 Nigerians and 1 Israeli in a private jet that landed in South Africa. The Senate Committee on Defense and Army, which is investigating the incident, held a closed-door meeting with security chiefs at the National Assembly. The chairman of the committee, Senator Thompson Sekibo, confirmed that the $9.3 million seized by the South African authorities belong to the federal government.
We have started the investigation. When we get through with the investigation, we'll brief you.
Can you confirm that money belongs to the Nigerian government?
The money belongs to the Nigerian government, yes. The armed forces were established by an act of the National Assembly. And then the act also spelled out categorically their conduct and the way they are to behave wherever they are. Now, if you join the military, that act is to guide you, especially the laws that the don'ts of the act should guide you. If you go contrary to any of the prescribed laws, the punishment prescribed for that act you violated will come on you. So the military did not just wake up one day and say that they are going to kill Mr. A or Mr. B. They went through their processes and they found them guilty.
Now we go back to our top story when I told you that President Barack Obama has laid out a broad vision of American leadership in a changing world in a UN speech. Now, he told the UN General Assembly that the world had not confronted the intolerance and hopelessness which feeds extremism. Now, for more on that speech and the activities going on in the UN General Assembly, I'm now being joined by the Voice of America's Margret Basheer, who is the VOA's UN correspondent. Margret, thank you so much for joining us on The World Today.
My pleasure.
Could you give us highlights on President Barack Obama's speech?
Well, he talked about violent extremism, calling it a cancer that has ravaged so many parts of the Muslim world. And he said that the U.S. is not at war with Islam, that Islam is a religion of peace. And we have many millions of American Muslims in this country, so who are part of the cultural fabric of our society. But he said that there needs to be collective steps in the international community to root out religious extremism. And he spoke about the Islamic State, the so-called Islamic State, ISIS, ISIL, as it's often referred to, saying it must be destroyed and degraded, its abilities degraded. He also actually called on the youth of the Arab and Muslim world. He said, so many of in Iraq and Syria. And he specifically addressed them. And he said to them, you come from this really rich faith and background, and don't let these bad guys who want to take you off this path lead you astray. And so he really tried to speak directly to the young people who are often recruited through the internet, through propaganda by these terrorist groups.
Now, Margaret, the Middle East security situation seems to be the focus during this meeting. What does that leave the African situation?
Well, Africa hasn't been left out of the General Assembly this year. I know a lot of the speeches will talk about terrorism, but we're going to be seeing very high level at the head of state and foreign minister level meetings on South Sudan, the crisis there, on Somalia's political process, on Libya, situation there is deteriorated. There's a mini summit on Mali this weekend. So Ebola tomorrow, the Secretary General is hosting a big meeting on Ebola. And as you know, the UN just started a new mission specifically on Ebola. So that will come up. So Africa is definitely on the agenda. It just may not be in front of the TV cameras as much as maybe the situation of the Middle East is, but it's definitely being discussed here.
Now, I just want to round up by asking you, I know the president of Nigeria, President Goodluck Jonathan, is going to speak today. Any expectations on what he might be talking about besides security probably? Or is that just do you think that might just be the focus?
I think certainly Boko Haram will be a focus of his talk and all the problems, the security situation in the north of Nigeria. I think the international community might hope that he will give an update on what's happened to the girls from Chibok, because there's been great international interest in that story. So hopefully he will say what the government's been doing to try and rescue and release these girls. So I think definitely it's going to be a major part of his speech, but also he may touch on climate change. He may touch on economic issues. So we'll have to wait and see. In a couple of hours, he's going to take the stage here.
Margaret, thank you so much for joining us in the world today. We appreciate your time. I've been speaking with the Voice of America's UN correspondent, Margret Basheer, and she's been telling us about the highlights of the UN General Meeting going on in New York. Thank you very much. Now, to wrap up things on the show, it can be a dog's life, but for those pooches who get the visit or to visit the dog swimming pool in Hanau, it's more like a spa life. The indoor pool exists only a little over a month, but is far from an insider's tip already. Loving dog owners bring their pets from all over the country, and some even put up with their 4-hour drive to visit the pool, which opened just a month ago. Those who can even take their 4-legged companion swimming up to 4 times a week go ahead to do so. The pool's owner was a truck driver for 10 years, but changed jobs after finding out that his passion lied with dogs. Once lathering and rinsing is complete, the fur of the dogs is dried and styled in little cabins that have hair dryers installed, and that's a proper spa day for Fido and Co. Well, that's the world today. Thank you for watching. I'm Cynthia Are.